revoke and make null and void all contracts, rituals, programs, frequencies, harmonics within the human heart, and agreements with all malevolent forces, abusive influencers, narcissistic psychopaths, savage hearts, violent entities, and violent, abusive human embodiments in other ethereal, energetic life, in all forms of existence, in this plane, in this reality, in all planes, in all forms of realities, in all dimensions and multiple timelines, past, present, and future, where they believe in enforcing their projected realities, their savagery, their programming, their agendas, their destruction from all of their dominions and their lords, their greeds, their movements, their kingdoms, their dominions and beliefs, where they and those enforce and mesmerize project their illusions as their projected realities into all life, all humanity, all animal, all plant, all life on all versions of earth, all life in the sea, all life in the air, all life in the aether, all terrestrial and extraterrestrial realms, all living, transient, elemental, their tyranny and destruction. I collapse and fold and dissolve into oblivion their catastrophic contracts, rituals, plans, and programs in all systems, and install and replace and invoke within them, within all, peace, love, balance, conscious awareness, heart centeredness, care, nurture, harmony, and remembrance of the universal law, with the consciousness for the universal mind, which is Great Spirit within the laws of mentalism, correspondence, vibration, polarity, rhythm, cause and effect, and gender. Great Spirit as the multi-universe exists in perfect harmony, love, creation, and order by virtue of these laws made in existence with us, for us, and within us as we are within it. It is done. Right. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining me. And we've got a very special guest with us, Eve Lorgen. Thank you very much for joining us. You've been in this path of discovery for a very long time. And I personally feel that you have a great deal of wisdom that you're sharing with everyone. You are a researcher and a consultant for anomalous trauma, and I do know that you wrote a book on the alien love bite and the dark side of Cupid, which is absolutely a very, very most amazing must-get novel book to have to learn from. So thank you very much for coming on. And we're here to basically just throw in a lot of our ideas around and connect some dots and just have fun while we're at it as well. Thank you, Eve.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, this will be great because I think we're just shoot from the hip, as they say, and just wing it with, some deep level stuff. And we don't need to reinvent the wheel for a lot of the people that we already know who are kind of on the up and up with knowing what's going on deeper levels. So we'll just say whatever and see where it goes.
Yeah, we're definitely not going to reinvent the wheel, that's for sure. We everybody who needs to understand who Eve Lorgen is, please, there will be a link at the bottom for you guys to look at, and it will also be on my website just to give a bit of background on Eve. I would suggest that you guys follow that along as well. Now, we're basically going to be discussing an idea or a path of thought with regards to connecting the dots in relation to what's been going on in the world right now in terms of the agenda of the technology, the artificial intelligent technology or nanotechnology, and how it also has an overlay of information with regards to military abduction experiences, as well as super soldier technology, as well as information on how we are able to work on it within ourselves, how we can learn from it. And based on that, we'll just go in with whatever we've got, and we're going to just be enjoying each other's company while we're sharing the information with you guys. Thank you.
Yeah.
Eve?
My goodness. Yeah, I mean that's a lot. And I think it's interesting because my window into learning a lot of what I call the anomalous trauma and even what people call conspiracy research with aliens and secret technology and secret programs really started in my own pursuit of understanding the truth behind UFOs and what were called alien abductions or ET visitation and those kinds of experiences that actually happened to me and my family,
Yeah.
as well as people that I learned later in life to understand, well, what's happening, right? And what are these experiences? And, are they really doing stuff to us on a physical level? And it turns out they are, and they were doing medical experimentation, as well as like alien implants and even manipulating our relationships and the subtle dream state or certain forms of, I think, mind control and manipulation, even in the astral realm, to set us up even in relationships, which is where the whole alien love bite theme in the book came from. It's called The Love Bite, Alien Interference in Human Love Relationships. So that kind of started off an understanding of how, the ETs and the aliens and these non-humans who are interacting with us on more advanced levels of obvious either technology or knowledge of who we are, and then manipulating us in these scenarios. And, it always calls to question, how come we didn't know this? How come they're seem to be so good at what they do in manipulating relationships where we thought we met our soulmate or we thought some events in our lives were, organic, so to speak, but a lot of them they seem to be orchestrated events through alien manipulation that we discovered later. So it kind of set off a quest to understand, well, how are they doing this and why are they doing this and how does it relate to what's going on today? If we even understand the methodology and the why and the who, so I guess that's what we can talk about, like how we understand it based on previous knowledge of what we've both experienced and researched. So,
well, basically what I was thinking with regards to the love bite scenario and such, I'm taking it up into another level, a much more perhaps deeper level with regards to the psychology of what people are going through in regards to the current crowning viral infection. I'm going to use the word Connor for that thing, and the medicine, which is the thing jab. So we know what we're looking at. So it doesn't get any signals. Connor and his meds, his jabs. Okay, so I definitely feel that in the way that the political, sociological, political elements have been presenting itself was to entice humanity to accept a ritual that is related to the same process as how a lover would entice, or the love bite, the narcissist, I'm going to call them a narcissist, would do to the people that he's or the predator, rather, that might be the better word, his victim. And this ritual is, from my understanding, from what I've come to bring to share with you, is called something called pandemos. And pandemos, I will give you the name. I will give you the title of
like
it.
God. Yeah. Is that a Grecian word or a Latin word or?
Well, it's quite interesting. Pandemos is the great Aphrodite, or the from ancient Greek romanized as demos, pandemos. It means common to all the people, and the equinox celebration of pandemos normally requires that Aphrodite unites all the inhabitants of a country into one social or political body. And the reason it's so important to understand this is that pandemos is connected to an epithet. The word epithet means the term of abuse. And that's why it's important to understand who pandemos is. Pandemos is also connected to Cthulhu, but pandemos is the feminized expression of Cthulhu as such. It is also important to understand that pandemos is related to Cthulhu. Cthulhu is the primordial source of the reality in which this reality exists in. One must consider that Cthulhu is related to the equinox as well, when there are normally celebrations of harvesting taking place. Cthulhu is essentially does not have a label of malevolence or anything that is positive to it. It is merely just a function of energy as such, dark or ether, in which one must understand it. I would liken it as an example of compost, which would explain to you why there is a celebration in terms of harvesting as such. Pandemos is connected to Cthulhu. But I'll explain that I'll tell you how it's.
Yeah, because that's
Pandemos, yes.
Cthulhu. That's a Freudian monster being type, which I've actually had a few clients who actually saw a Cthulhu type being in a love bite situation, matter of fact.
Okay. So then you see that Cthulhu is operating on a primordial existence frequency. It operates as a primordial deity or an entity that is it's like, for example, when you go to a particular land and you're going to lay claim to this land, and before you are claiming that land was used for rituals. When you go and live on that land, you are energetically infected by the rituals that were taking place on that land. Okay. The same thing for Cthulhu, where it is an elemental structure or a primordial energy or an essence that is like filling the layers between the realities of this plane up. It is essentially like it does not have evil or positive qualities to it, except depending on who is within it or surrounded by it. So it's like magic. It's a type of dark matter. It's okay. So imagine the universe is like a giant cake with lots of layers inside of it. Okay, and these layers are planes of existence on this earth, and each layer, the icing between each layer is Cthulhu type energy. Okay, but now remember, Cthulhu has a negative connotation to it because of negativity that's experienced within that reality, but it can also then sometimes have a feminine, quiet, kind, loving aspect to it as well, which I've researched it. So what it actually is it's dark matter, which does not have either a negative or a positive trait to it, except for the influence of the person or the human or culture that influences it for it to become what it then becomes. Okay. Now, Pandemos is related because she is Aphrodite, and they're on the day of her. There are rituals that are done on her day. Anyway, her name means to take control through beauty. Civilizations, actually, that's what it means in a rough.
To take on, what was it?
To control civilizations
through beauty.
Through her beauty.
Oh. kind of like a manipulation or a seduction more, you
Yes,
know?
which is related to the love bite thing again, which is
Oh,
which is related to it's fun to it's wonderful if you experience to live at home or locked up in your locked up state because it's beautiful. It's kind of
oh,
that sort of idea, that scenario, that thing where I'm going on.
I know.
Does this? Did you follow where I'm going with this?
Well, I mean, they're trying to make you, well, it would be like, you know, somebody trying to
Enticing,
manipulate you into always thinking that whatever you're in, there's a good part to it so they can continue to manipulate you so you don't see the dark aspects of their control system or something.
yes.
You know, like a narcissist, you know, like you'll say something like, wow, you know, it really hurt that you did X, Y, and Z, or you weren't here for my birthday or whatever it was. And then they'll say, well, you know, I give you all this. I'm glad I'm here right now. And then they always try to mind fuck you to always appreciate the teeny little morsels that you can try to think is all positives to take away the negativity of
Yeah,
their disease. They are a disease. You
that
know
is
what I mean?
exactly it. They sacrificed on her day, which is very similar to what you're saying about the disease. They sacrificed a goat, a female goat, which is the scapegoat of the feminine or the feminine psyche. Previous videos I've discussed the
Yeah.
scapegoat, which is related to the feminine principles, which is soul, which is the soul. The soul is feminine, and to then be enticed by information. I guess let me just be straight, direct, be frank here. The the system is trying to entice us to accept the jab that it is good and beautiful for our future, our existence. It presents itself. The system presents to us a series of archetypes which are related to the love bite in action. It's like we're being constantly wooed and hoovered by this narcissist over and over and over and over. So we're getting the psychological, spiritual bombardment at all times.
Yes.
Um, Now, because of the changes in astrology, lends itself to where it is now using. Oh my gosh, I'm really getting so desperate to get you people to accept my will,
Yeah.
believe what I'm saying to you. I'm going to introduce it to you. Now I'm going to throw in something else that will make you like accept it even more. But every
Yeah.
time they're trying to do this, and this is the fourth time, we are succeeding. Every time we succeed. And they
Yeah. We're
keep
falling
trying to,
in.
yes, and they keep resetting through
Yeah.
their narration or their script, their ideals that we must fall for. The whole
It's,
thing
yeah.
is the ritual is about enticing the
Yeah.
soul in whatever way it's possible.
Yeah. It's
That's
like
really,
the,
I guess, the bottom line of what I'm trying to say. And that's
yeah.
why I feel it's related to your work.
Yeah, even the enticing, like when I look into the how we understand psychologically the narcissistic abuse relationship with, let's say, a primary narcissist, covert or overt really doesn't make a difference,
Yeah,
but they will have a, let's say the initial phase would be the grooming, the hoovering, the enticing to get you to join the shared fantasy. It's
that's
always a
right.
shared fantasy, which is they morph you more and more into this shared fantasy, and they have the ability to make you feel like that they're your soulmate and they are you and you are them, but they're
That's
trying to
right.
turn you into them is what they're trying to do.
Yeah,
And then it happens over time, and I continually find this utterly amazing how
it is.
the step by step enticement process, even before the devaluation, right? But they're able to mind control you into accepting it and becoming confused about your own identity, your own feelings, your own reality. And they entice you into accepting more and more of the shared fantasy so that you become confused. Your original self is completely confused until you adopt their entire narrative. You become a puppet mind control of their narrative and their shared fantasy. And then they, of course, devalue you over time until they discard you.
Mm,
But it's interesting because it is like a ritual. I mean,
yeah.
they have a cyclic pattern of behaving, which is, when we look at even at death and corruption and how we can make parallel, let's say, metaphors between, I mean, I don't want to sound biblical, but let's say if there was an original father who was, the evil one, like the fallen angels or
Yeah,
something, and that they were liars, and deceivers from the beginning, and they have the envy. They want to destroy, they want to kill, and they want to copy, and they want to turn us into them.
that's right.
So it's always the same dynamic with someone who is so separated from the spirit of truth, the spirit of God, the spirit of life, that even when they encounter love, and this is what happens with a narcissist. So even if you do have a love relationship where you're being kind and compassionate and you're acting maybe more kind to them, having mercy on them, they use that as an excuse to devalue you and punish you even more.
Mm,
So the normal logic of a person who's connected to God and the spirit of truth, and maybe they're a little codependent, what their logic to do is will cause you more and more destruction. So you really have to know the wiles of how they operate in order to know how to respond appropriately for self-protection.
that's right.
You know,
Now, self-protection is to allow is to allow oneself to become original, to be authentic, to become actualized, um,
yeah,
which is what I feel is really the deeper lesson here for humanity as such.
yeah,
In terms of the examples that we have now seen, and we've both been doing some research on the examples of the actual jabbing taking place or the testing of the before the jab goes in, um, which is related to a certain doctor, which we can't say his name. And
ouchie. It's like, ouch, ouch.
yeah, this,
I don't know.
I'm talking about the good guy now.
Okay, I get it.
No, it's good, but that ouchie is yeah. Um, I actually think he's not human because he's got a non-human energy about him. That's I've seen it on the I can see it. But aside from that, there's a certain doctor which seems to be the one who really is trying his best to share the knowledge with everyone. I've got some of his material which I will mask so that when we see it in the video, that
Okay.
you will see a mask over it so that you won't, so that it doesn't draw any particular attention. But this particular man, I'm just going to give it in short, um, explains that, well, how does a MyLab person experience an implant is in the same way that a person experiences the Q-tip going into your nose.
God, for
Right?
sure.
Yeah,
Well, that's so triggering. When I saw that, I thought, I can't believe this. They're doing alien implants
that's
in
right.
people's nose.
That's
Right.
right. And he even proves it because further along in the material, and we've seen it, they show that it's actually live nanotechnology that this lady is showing to you. It moves as it's being used to put into your nasal passages. Now, apparently, this part of your nasal passage is extremely important and very porous. Um, and you don't have to do much to actually fracture that little barrier before it goes into
Yeah.
the brain
It's a
area.
thick one. It hits the brain barrier. There's
That's
like
right.
it's little porous, and that's how they get material into the brain. It
That's
would
right.
bypass normal.
Twisting motion that's utilized when the speculum is inserted into the nasal turbinate, all the way back in, and then it's twisted. Now, what's interesting is something that I recently had a friend of mine share with me. I have to just read this to you guys so you can see it. There was a physician, this friend of mine, sent me this message and said, I recall a doctor a number of years ago who spent time removing CIA implants that altered the brainwaves, injected thoughts, and drove people mad that had them. The implants were microscopic in nature and placed at the base of the brain. They had been implanted by using long swabs that they stuck deep into the sinus cavity and twisted. this is the exact same method that's being used currently for the testing process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we now know that in actual fact, the narcissist now is trying to, well, let me put it this way, we're onto them. We know the next step. The next step is how they're trying to make us become them, right? That's the next step.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
They do.
And
Yeah.
and they're using the technology through their testing, and they're using that technology in their jabbing, which we're aware of as well.
Have you heard I mean, I haven't got much scientific info, but now they're doing a supposed rectal swab test. And
Really?
I don't know how accurate it is, but I'm like, when they go to that level, after the jab up the nose, I mean,
This is
what do you hear about
desperation.
in alien abductions? Oh, they stick something up your nose. Oh, they do the anal probe. I'm like, talking about a total alien
Parallel.
abduction. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Almost like,
In
kidding
daylight,
me?
willingly.
Yeah. It's a mockery. It's a total
That's
mockery
right.
is what it is.
That is it. That is it. That is the theatrics, as well as obviously it's a bonus if they can get you to, become implanted and actually function as a receiver, because that's what it is.
Not only that, but I mean, if I can go on and like the anal swab jab, whatever you want to call it. I mean, that mimics sodomy, and then what
Yes.
sodomy is in black magic and trauma-based mind control and SRA and the whole demonic level of control and manipulation through sodomy. It is a whole other spiritual level of control and infection, and that needs to be addressed in terms of the depth of their power and control systems through certain ritual behaviors.
Yeah.
You know?
Now,
Yeah, that's a lot, but I just had to say
no,
it.
please bring it up. Please bring it up. It's very important. I mean, the buttocks is very important. It's the seat of the original essence of your origin, of your
Yeah.
human and soul covenant, the seat of your base chakra, like
Mhm.
there.
Life.
So yes,
Mhm.
and to violate that particular area is incredible. It's part of the activation of the disassociation with the body, so that when you're violated there, that you are immediately wanting to disassociate from your
Yes,
form,
absolutely.
physical form,
Yeah.
so that when something happens, so then someone slaps their hands or something happens, you easily slip out of your body,
Yeah.
which is in reality really part of that. I mean, they also used that particular ritual back in the day when they had the Templars, who were very actively busy to try and create their movement by creating, uh, well, how can we put it? It was like making a fool of the beliefs of Christianity by kissing the behind of a goat to
Yeah. Yeah.
imitate the fact that they are rejecting Christianity as such, or any particular religious base for that matter. It's just another form of um,
Inversion or
is,
mockery.
yeah, mockery. That all I can see is mockery all the time. I can see it the whole
Yeah.
time in everything they're doing. Um, they are, in actual fact, I'm jumping to something else as well with regards to what you're saying. Inserting gold, titanium, copper, silver, silica inside of you through these kits. These kits, by the way, I found it out today.
So
And
tell me more about that.
yeah, well, they are basically inserting the gold into your body through there, so that it becomes part of your I'll tell you now, through the nucleic acid hybridization. It becomes part of your nucleus. It becomes a
Okay.
hybrid nucleus. And
Okay.
in other words, it then copies your DNA strand. And then
So
through,
would it be yeah, like with I saw a video on the things they're sticking up your nose, and not only the nanotech stuff that they do to keep it embedded in there and scrape
yeah,
it, but
yeah,
the fibers of the cotton are like the Morgellon fibers, and they
okay,
react differently, and they have probably some kind of metallic magnetic component in them, so they really stick to
yeah,
the tissues. so that they can embed whatever technologies in there to get into your system. And I guess if you're talking about the mRNA, which would be the sequences they want your own genes to reproduce through the ribosome, right? In
Yeah.
the endoplasmic whatever,
Yeah.
the organelles inside the cell.
Yeah.
And then they would, whatever sequence that they desire to reproduce,
Yeah.
is the whole toxins, which will kill you. And so it's just a bioweapon genocide weapon,
Right.
like,
That's right.
but I think, it makes you wonder though. I mean, we've talked about this maybe on email, but if they are targeting, let's say with this mRNA vaccine, which I think vaccines are genetically behind the scenes, they might be targeting certain races or certain genetic
Bloodlines.
combinations
Yes.
to either make them sick or to take them out or to identify them. So let's say if somebody had a certain reaction, they'll say, well, this person has the metagene, let's say, for example,
Yes.
because we know in the MyLab projects, they're looking to assess for the metagene, which is kind of, it's a vague, I don't even know if we know if there's a real sequence gene or if it's a set of characteristics which could allow the expression of a metagene under certain conditions. Usually it's near death. Usually this is what people describe. So maybe that there is a segment of the human population that still has a type of divine metagene from the original blueprint, and then they're trying to tag it or identify it so they can control it or take it out. But I would think that they would want to identify it and then control it. So
That's interesting.
yeah.
It's interesting. So you've done a bit of research on that.
I was listening to one of the secret space program whistleblowers named Johann Fritz, who has been on several interviews, and he talked about some of the technologies used. And he did mention, how they identified like the metagene qualities in someone when they're doing early testing. Although I think that they genetically know, like if you're in a family and then they test you out when you're a kid in certain ways and like, okay, this person, has the primary qualities we're looking for. Then they abduct them some more and they do more training, more testing, and then they pop you into a program because you have some kind of metagene. And I actually heard someone, it wasn't actually a MyLab, but it was somebody who was identified, can't name names, having what they call the immortal gene. And there was something about there's some people who had like an immortal gene where if they were put under a bunch of situations that had to do with, let's say, frequencies, where they like their frequencies are raised to a certain level to augment their psychic abilities, their manifestation abilities, whatever, and then they crash them down. So basically, it would be like a lot like a love bite in some ways, where they groom you up in this love, and then they crash you down, and they groom you up, and they crash you down, and crash you down, crash you down harder and harder until you barely can like survive.
Yeah.
So part of the survival mechanism would be if somebody had that immortal gene, they would be able to more easily recover and actually recover death programming through frequencies. Maybe normal people would just die, but somebody with that immortal gene or maybe a meta gene would be able to overcome this in ways that maybe on the appearance it doesn't look like they're immortal or something, but based on the conditions of their torture, which is really done under experimental conditions by operatives who are like totally dark hats who target these people. They know who they are, and then they worm their ways into their life, usually as like a positive guru or some sort of, they're connected to this person or that person or some secret information, and then maybe it's on a spiritual level, and then they're really operatives who are just here to find out who you are, identify you, and test you under all these conditions, and probably take you out. So just like, for example, I mean, I'm jumping off here, but like in the Montauk project, where we've heard many people tell testimonies about being put in the Montauk experimentation as a MK Ultra, SRA, MyLab, super soldier kind of situation, and how most of the children who were put through the early Montauk, thousands of them died. So they would find some of them to do this, test them, and then most of them died. So, but then the ones who were good, and then they make sure that they would reproduce or clone them or find out who they are so they can get more and more people in these projects who had these superior abilities and then just amplify them. So I think, I just think some of these things in life, even including what we call the jabs, are
that
experimental.
They don't have any other blueprint to follow. I mean, that is what they've been doing for so long. they literally are just copying the same agenda over and over and over. They, I mean, if you look at the whole thing, are you even surprised? I mean, there's a sense of disbelief, obviously, for the audacity of pulling certain things off, right? But have you actually really looked at it objectively and seen that it really is, there's nothing more different. There's nothing new. It's just the same pattern, the same story. When I saw
Yeah.
this whole thing happening, I thought to myself, isolation is, it's like, how would you take care of a prisoner is you'd isolate them and then you'd treat them with all kinds of stuff so that they would believe that, so that their mental capacity would fracture. And
Yes.
then in that capacity, then they would allow you to then, they would then think, okay, so let's just test and see who's who here in the zoo. Um, and that particular energy is utilizing, that entity is utilizing all the natural forces that we have existing on in this plane, including the primordial force, which is, if it's misunderstood, or if it is understood as negative, is called Cthulhu, but I call it actually compost, because that's what it
Oh.
looks like to me. It is like
Hmm.
compost, or compost, however you say it. Um, and compost is when there's a lot of things that are put into it and you use it for your ground to grow something else. That is what I see it to be. They're trying to, um, well, they are actually touching on active on affecting that primordial force. It's being affected by the malevolent forces. That's from what I can see. So it just correlates with what you've been researching and what you've been working on for so many years, and that you've had experience with. That um, you're aware. You can show where we must go in terms of how we
Yeah.
achieve our path forward. I mean, you've survived. You're the
Yeah. Like,
survivor,
where we
right?
go. And
Right. Yes.
like, how do you survive? Because it's almost like a near-death experience.
Right.
Uh, well, I mean, even in the love bite, and some people just don't take it seriously, but when you've had one where it was pretty serious, or where there was a dark predatory, if there was, let's say your partner was a predatory one where some dark beings were working through them, maybe like, let's say in a guru or a sorcerer capacity, where you were linked in with somebody who had a higher dose of what I call the more malevolent vampiric entities, who had a
Yeah.
higher capacity for damage, and then getting through that. And I think that the resources, have to be spiritual ultimately, um, to get you to the root of your being, which for me, which is interesting, you talk about the whole primordial thing. It's
Mm.
almost as if, in order to tap into the greatest transformative power we have,
Yeah.
sometimes we have to go down to the root essence of our primordial being to come to a kind of reset realization, to
Mhm.
get us back on track, to realize what we've been under, what we've been existing and
Yeah.
experiencing through this situation. I mean, that's what had to happen to me. It was like a near death experience, but it was also something that helped me realize in my own way of let's say the connection with I just call it the Father, who's the highest Father of the universe, whatever. Um, my connectedness with a larger being we call God, and knowing that I am one with him, and we co-created this life in order to realize certain truths that bring us closer and closer to our true beingness through selfless love.
Yeah.
But the selfless love lesson, even though selfless love can bring you to that place, what I realized, quote, as a codependent, which many of us who've been through, let's say, a relationship in a love bite kind of thing with somebody who had the primary narcissistic qualities, and we're maybe more codependent,
Mm.
then we will fall into a certain pattern that is unhealthy, because the primary injury that we both have leads us to a false perception of self, which
Yeah.
is really not truly loving ourself.
Yes.
So the codependent thing, and this is where religion and certain spiritual traditions where they maybe make you take vows and you have belief systems to be selfless, like a nun, living in poverty, and being the bodhisattva. Not until every sentient being in the universe is freed do you have to give your life over. Da, da, da.
Yeah.
Well, I've found that is a dangerous
Not
thing
working.
if one hasn't truly healed their own, let's say, attachment trauma and their own tendencies towards certain personality styles, which would be, let's say, a codependent or a narcissist or an addict or whatever,
Yeah.
that you really have to overcome on the deepest levels of your being before you even take the step of something like a bodhisattva or some higher spiritual thing. That more often than not, there's the missing link, that what I call the spiritual bypass,
Yeah.
that a lot of people do in the New Age movement or even in religious movements, where they get too fundamental in the belief system without doing the deeper work that is an emotional, psychological healing that must take place. So that self-understanding is often lacking in those spiritual scriptures, texts, books, and even belief systems, which tells me, as a therapist who had to learn the hard way, there's a lot of shit missing
Mm-hmm.
in these alleged scriptures. And I'm not saying that they're not sacred, but there's a lot of missing links in there that if we don't have those missing links, we're gonna get creamed. Okay. So we really need to get this, because humanity is on the brink of being completely, well, you fill in the blanks. What do you
Oh,
think?
yes. Yeah. Sure. So this is why I'm thinking, and
Yeah.
and you are so dead on what you're explaining there. It's like you were busy. It's like we were thinking the same thing, because there is a certain sense of dying off of energy that has to take place. This is why I'm saying, in my personal experiences, I've had, I know exactly how their minds work, and I also know that they are super psychic. I've got one that's very psychic and
Oh, wow.
tracks me in every, you cannot imagine. But anyway, I've learned how to change and die off that attachment that I tried to that I saw that creature was trying to identify me with. That
Oh,
perception or that belief of that person of me. I'm he believes that I am weak. He believes that I am subjected to his existence. And I chose to break that belief or that projection within
yeah.
myself. Because the more something tries to bully you into subjection, the more you give that belief, the more you give that energy belief, right? You give it structure, you make it real within yourself. It's like you fragment yourself because you're so
Yeah.
confused, you don't know what to do, that you literally fragment yourself. And
Yeah.
I basically had to work on fragmenting everything, breaking it all down. Boom, one shot, gone, and recreating a
Yeah.
new, more, just like what you said, what you experienced.
Rebuilding and
Yeah.
yeah. But it's like, I don't know, maybe it is a refinement by fire, so
Oh,
to
no, that's
speak.
really a refinement,
Yeah,
but
I would have to say that even in my quote, my first major love bite, because it
yeah,
almost seemed like a spiritual initiation, although I've had others that
yeah,
were more profound, that,
yeah,
you know, I had to let go of certain belief systems. And I know what one of the things I wanted to bring up
yeah,
too was let's say we talked about selfless love and how it can bring you into this selfless love bliss kind of transcendent state of being, even in a love bite. But in my thing, like if
mm,
you are true to the highest, and you it's kind of like a surrendering to the truth of the highest, regardless of what you want,
yeah,
regardless of what you desire, like letting go of that so that a higher truth, a higher wisdom can emerge to put you in the place where is the highest instead of just your desire.
yeah,
And then that led me to the understanding that even let's say in this love bite situation where I wanted that person to be my mate, and then realizing, well, this person basically as a narcissist, and that, you know, if you love them in this way, it would be like molesting your own son. In other words, they are a child, they operate as a child. So a love relationship between you and a narcissist who's operating at a toddler, infantile, at the max teenage,
Yeah.
it's like an adult with a child.
Yeah.
That's a molestation. That's a molestation. So wait, you don't want an experience in a love relationship essentially like molesting your own child, because you're not with an adult.
Yeah.
You're with an infantile or a young child. So that was like, oh, okay. Then I needed to like reset, like it wouldn't ever be possible with someone like that, because they are actually younger than a child on a psychological and maybe even a spiritual level. They're not your true half. So, you know, your true, you know, other half may be something else or somewhere else, or certainly not what we thought.
Yes,
Yeah.
certainly. Particularly with regards to how we are seeing the reality right now. I'm taking with what you're saying and I'm bringing it into with regards to the current reality that we're experiencing. The perpetrators, I'm going to call it them like that. I used to call them cancer, and then I thought maybe I shouldn't call them that. I would rather call them perpetrators. And what I found in their existence is they don't have anything else to do other than what they're doing.
Wait, say that again. Didn't ask you, or
no? What I'm saying is they don't know what to do. They are doing the same thing. They don't have anything original in them. They operate on an archontic belief structure that they are created as that element. That is what they are supposed to do. That is their function. So I worked on changing or transmuting that element to something that basically taking away the power, their power, by enforcing within myself what they teach me.
what they teach you, or what?
Yes, what they teach me. What do they teach me? What do these perpetrators teach me? That damn, I am very strong. And
Yes.
number two, I'm obviously something that's much, much more special than you are for you to try to do this to me, type of thing. And I keep taking away their power in that way. So I've been, and before this video, there will be a revocation, which is exactly how we are revoking the contract with the narcissist.
Yeah.
And the way that perpetrators, function.
I know. I mean, I run across people who are having a great difficulty in really finding a way to, you know, cut the cords and cut the influences of, it's as if, you know, once you're with an initial perpetrator, narcissist, bite, whatever you want to call it, there's an infection that takes place, right? Like a bite infection. And then after that, you think, oh, you're over it. And you survive that one. And it's like, it keeps happening. And, you know, is this a supernatural virus that's being transmitted? And sometimes I wonder, you know, something like that going on.
I think you're very spot on there with a supernatural type of thing, because have you noticed how psychic they are, just generally, individually?
Yes.
They're quite psychic. And that's all they have, is they only have that. I mean, a predator only has one role to fulfill, and that's to hunt. Whereas the prey exists to have a family, live, flourish, make babies, and go forward in life. Unless the prey is made aware that it is being hunted, then it becomes the prey.
Yeah.
Something that is innocent becomes the prey once it's made aware that it is being hunted. The state of thought, the state of mind that needs to change. We need to change how we feel about ourselves with regards to what they are doing to us.
Yeah, and I think that realization takes place when you, you know, when you're really doing, let's say, recovery. I mean, from the narcissistic type of predatorial relationship, vampiric, and it could be covert as well. When those influences come through, the only way you could recover is to not only know yourself, but you must know their true nature.
Right.
Because if you don't know the true nature, you're going to keep reacting and responding in ways that will cause your own defeat and your own predation over and over again. So it's like a shift has to take place to truly understand their nature.
Mm.
And that's the only kind of thing that helped me, was understanding their nature, then understanding my nature. And there's interesting thing about the psychic nature of like the super predators.
Yeah.
And then I've noticed this with sorcerers in particular, where it's almost as if, this is what I believe later on after the fact, right? That they were connected to something like a psychic AI infection. And whether it happens on a psychic level or a energetic level where it's not necessarily physical, but maybe it functions on a physical level too, that somehow that infects them to make them more psychic. And then it can infect you, or where you're just connected to them psychically, and then connected to others psychically. It's almost like it is a virus, this psychic thing. So it seems like the AI, how I experienced it, and maybe it's just my own thing, but they are like a quantum computing, high intelligence, psychic level of being able to predict and try to completely mind control you into a whole perceptual reality that's not real,
That's
or not
interesting. You bring
not based on original awareness. So it's like, in order to bypass their control, you have to not be as predictable as they assume you
Right.
are, based on their beliefs of what they're learning through quantum computing on all these levels. So that the only solution that I see is something that someone has reported to me and explained to me over the years, what she did to help her become more free from not only, let's say, love bite stuff, but alien abduction and the influences that come through that process, that's much more sophisticated than I think most of us really realize. That she started doing, of course, she started with some of Dr. Corrado Malanga's work, which have to do with the simulations and the integration of mind, spirit, soul in the body, and removing the alien implants and the active alien memories that inserted itself in her consciousness, in her like implants, and then integrating, let's say, the alter personalities that have been dissociated through trauma and deliberate trauma and entrapment by these beings, who actually went and took these alter parts and then hid them in other dimensional realities under the guardian of a type of demon kind of thing. And so she started working with, lucid dreaming, and more dreaming and understanding her own dream symbols and some of the Jungian archetypes that would pop up. And then recognizing not only the mind control programming that was specific in her case, but also the archetypal programmings of the AI itself, which always seemed to relate to what the aliens were doing, or the instructions by them, at least the malevolent ones. So it had this whole overlay within even the more subtle energy body and consciousness, even on a conceptual level, that would show up in dreaming. And then she was able to say, okay, I see this. I see it always trying to reify its programming through these symbols and these dream scenarios. So she would be lucid and then observing this. And then with her intention to connect with what you called, I think you called it original awareness, which might be part of this primordial thing, but it always had to do with original awareness that is of the highest, most refined, and almost you can't necessarily grasp it. But it's there all the time, and its signal is decreased when people have more ego and more programming and more of the AI influence. So we need to increase the signal of the original awareness, and when you're intentional connection with that, I think in a kind and humble way, which is benevolence, which was pro-life, pro-goodness, pro-love, pro-wisdom, not selfishness, ego, blah, blah, blah. Right. So when you're connected with that, what would happen with her is that this original awareness would just keep up leveling itself at a higher and higher degree of not only awareness, but it would change the program. So it would spontaneously act in ways which are not logical, to keep changing the AI program, so that keep overlaying its program. And she was finally able to be able to recognize it and to basically reprogram to the original template of primordial original awareness, which is pretty like, oh my God, are you kidding me? This is like phenomenal.
It is.
So in her exchanges with me, she was showing, the progress she was making in her relationships, which in her relationship, she did finally dissolve like a bad marriage that would have never worked because it was a love bite, and she worked on it as much as she could. There's only so much responsibility you can take as a person who's on the healing and growing path before you have to cut ties with someone who's just not cutting it and
Yeah.
just not willing to do their work.
Mhm.
And if they're not willing to do their work, you got to let it go so you can move on. So she did move on and found a new relationship. But the aliens were still trying to set her up with love bites, and they would set her up with like, there were some types that would set up, they always do a more and more powerful one if the old one didn't work. They're always trying to redo their strategies to like really slam you.
Yeah.
So like, let's say if the original one was just like an ordinary person who was, not a high level sorcerer,
Mm.
then the next ones they would choose for her would be like these new age guru, meditation, this and that. And they're like popular, and they seem like a really powerful person
Yeah.
in that realm. Like sometimes it's in the spiritual realm, right? And try to slam her with that, and then she totally saw through every single bit of it, and they tried to set her up with something like that. So, and then her dreams would show up where the symbols of what was happening would reveal themselves to her in such a way she realized through the archetypal imagery of how she figured out in her dreams. It was like, oh, this is what this is, this is what this is, okay, got it, bye.
Mm.
And so she didn't fall for it, but they still tried,
Of course.
you know.
They have
Yeah.
it's in their nature. Yeah. But wow, that is amazing.
Like almost like that's what reality is to them, is to continually try to entrap us through agreement
Correct.
in their game, which goes into one of the things that I wanted to bring up, what I think that you had some ideas on with the jab, or
Mm.
we call it Connor's meds, and
Yeah.
Connor is that solar guy, it's like whatever. Anyway, so with Connor's jab, I think what they're aiming to do is a type of communion acceptance ritual, which will commune you, let's say, with the love bite predator who's like connected to Legion AI or something. And then once that communion ritual happens, you start losing your identity, you start losing your own will, your own original awareness, and then they just use that battery to instigate their program and make you them.
That's right.
This is what
Simulation.
they do. They want to press us into them like a bunch of infected AI, narcissist predators, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is
Which
it.
is true,
That's it.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. That is exactly everything in a nutshell. That's it. What you just said there now.
And what's scary though? I mean, I think many of us later, let's say in our recovery years, if we've been in, relationships that weren't so great, and they might have had a quality with a narcissistic partner or a love bite or this or that, and then when you're caught up into it and you're in something like that for a long time, you might start adopting certain behaviors that either are similar, or because of your need to defend yourself, or in order to, let's say, communicate and get something that you want, even as like a normal human, right? It's like you got to fight for it, but not only because the fight doesn't work, you got to manipulate to get it. Then you got to be mean to get it. And then pretty soon you have to feel like you have to turn into a totally nasty person who has to manipulate and control just to get a morsel of like a little bit of love, because obviously you can't trust the narcissist. So it can turn people into nasty, selfish, it turn you into them until you get well. So it is like a disease. I mean, it really is when you think about like the damage they do. Yeah. Sam Vaknin talks about this, where he's just so brilliant when he discusses a lot. Yeah. He doesn't even talk about aliens. It's like, well, the narcissist is an alien.
Yeah, that is exactly it.
Yeah.
That's
the bad ones anyway, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, you get those that are, you wonder if they're actually even human because of their way that they present themselves. Yeah, specifically with what's been going on. I mean, now, it's really funny. I'm jumping to something different now. You remember this whole story where it was coming up that it's going to be this massive disclosure about aliens existing and all of that stuff? Do you remember that psyop that they were trying to harp on for a
Well,
while?
which one? You know how many times they've been trying to do disclosure and like, oh, this is gonna happen, that's gonna happen, and like,
Yeah.
what
What if it's that? What if this is it? What if this is the supposed disclosure that they are showing themselves now, and they keep showing themselves by doing all kinds of stuff to us, and we're
yeah.
still waiting for the aliens to come down from the sky, and
Well, we're
they're here,
expecting.
and look at what they're doing. I'm not saying, oh, this is just, I'm just tongue in cheek. This is just tongue in cheek. But what I'm trying to say is there is a sense of alien um, behavior, treatment, which is not human. It is non-human. It is, or it's dead. It's either dead or it's alien, cold and dead, for it to exert its power. Not so, right?
Well, I mean, it's getting more and more ridiculous, and
Yeah,
you know,
it's
a
like
lot
really
of people,
funny actually.
in the quote awaken aware world, which they have ideas about themselves about being woke, which is kind of funny when
Yeah,
not everybody's as woke as they think they are, but
yeah,
they think that, oh, well, maybe if this shows itself up in more and more obvious tones of,
yes,
I mean, do you get it? You get it? You get it?
yeah,
Like, oh yeah, get the
yeah,
memo. Like crazy. Yeah, this is like how bad
yeah.
they
Or I
are.
was right all
They
along.
don't see it.
And also, yeah, yeah. I
But
know.
I think the ability to mind control people over time, and actually it's a big mockery that's taking place. How many people aren't seeing it for what it is, and why have they been so hoodwinked? And I really do think there's technologies being used based on in my hunch, right, with
Mm,
they talk about chemtrails and what's in the
mm,
chemtrails, and the and the foods we eat and the
yeah,
air we breathe and the medicines we take will put a veil over our perceptual capabilities so that we're not really feeling or seeing
mm,
things clearly. And I think that takes place too, that there might even be technologies which could just make entire populations just really dummied down.
yeah.
And I know they've been doing this in small scale experiments,
Yeah.
even like I learned this in a MyLab disclosure at one of these support group meetings that me and James Bartley were part of, where, and I think it had to do with that they put something in the water in a
Right.
community in the high desert of Southern California, and then wanted to notice the effects. Where I remember one gal remembered, she had the classic MyLab and reptilian abduction being used as an
Yeah,
operative and some kind
yeah,
of capability, and usually psychic abilities, but other
yeah.
abilities. But she was taken also in these side projects where they were working with certain people only in her community, which was like a small town in the high desert, right, in Southern California, and where they took a group of people in the neighborhood. And she was always the lucid one, right, because she was one of the rare ones who would get out of the trance or get out of the mind control. And she remembered being taken with a group of people, and they were like, in their pajamas or nude, because they would take them like in bed, and most of them were all tranced out, thinking they were dreaming or thinking this or that, and they were like drugging them and doing things with them and experimenting with like certain groups for some reasons. And she was the only one who really remembered.
Mm,
And but it was like, wow, they're doing all kinds of little side projects on top of it,
yeah,
like.
yeah. I just think that they've stopped doing it now. I think what I'm trying to say is I think that they're doing it now in the open. Why bother keeping it a secret now? They're doing it in the open. I mean, because how, aside from the fact that we're discovering it now, or that we are talking about it, surely, um, have you noticed that they're not hiding things
Yes.
as much,
You know what it makes me think?
right?
This reminds me of, like, when you're in a bad situation with a predator or a criminal or whatever, and they think you're gonna die.
Yeah,
So they just like tell you shit and they don't
yeah,
hide it. And it's like,
yeah,
so they think they're so much in control.
yeah,
They think they've got you so much. They don't care if they reveal
yeah,
themselves as a shape-shifting reptilian who's like,
yeah,
whatever, right? So
yeah,
that's like at that point where they don't even care
right,
that they're being seen for what they're doing because they're so confident that they've got you.
right.
And so that's what scares me, is like they've got this level of confidence that they've got us.
Yeah, that's their confidence. Yes,
The reason
right.
they'd be doing it so openly, or so obviously, you know?
Yes, I agree with you. So this is why I'm saying, how do we defeat this narcissist? How do we fight them?
That has been the biggest mystery, really. And I'm still like beside myself, really wondering, like, how did I not know? Like when I was in a bad marriage or whatever situation, and you know, the discernment factor, not being able to see the red flags, and it was as if a veil was over my level of ability to perceive on multiple levels, and I really think it boils down to the infection of, let's say, dark forces that are surrounding you or even inside you as a result of being under these influences so long. Um, so some of it is like spiritual attached entities, for example. And the other part is if you're not getting enough life force itself, because you're being so vampirized, so that you don't have the energy to give you the awareness and to get outside of the emotional numbness and your brain literally shutting down in amnesia because you're at such a low level of barely surviving. You're at like the lowest level of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, so that you can barely function. So because you can barely function on such a low level of energy, that you can't perceive, or it's not safe for you to do so, or you might have a complete mental breakdown. You know, so it's like you have to build your energy and your confidence and the love in your life and the willingness to face, you know, whatever that demon is, and then God works with you, I think, however, whatever way you say it, works with you to wake up. And then when you wake up, it's sometimes so shocking because, you know, it's like PTSD when you realize you're in the room with a predator, for example, sleeping with the enemy, whatever. And you're living in the same house. It's like, I can't stay here, but I've got to keep my calm because if I do this, that, or the other, they might kill me. And you can't let them know that you know, and you got to just operate on a totally different level so that you can get yourself out of a situation when you're just like, wah, wah, you know, like so shocked of the horror of it all that, oh my God, I can't believe that this is what the truth is. And it has always been, I'm just seeing it now. So getting over your reactivity to what you would normally want to just bolt and do whatever you can, but you can't. Like you're in a situation of being in occupied territory of the enemy, and you must act like a spy. So they never know, they're not onto you. They can't use their telepathic abilities or whatever they usually do to know where you are, what you're doing, what you're planning. So they can't know of your escape. So you have to operate on a completely different level of functioning.
Would you say, sorry to interrupt you there, would you say that that level that you have to operate on is almost on the same level as the predator? Would you say
the level of, what did you say?
The predator's energy? Would you say that the reason you're reacting, responding the way is related to what the predator is perhaps projecting to you to behave as? I mean, making you feel stressed out and
oh yeah, well that's part of their modus operandi is to do as much as they can to control and manipulate you into an easily manipulated emotional mess that's reactive, so they can control you and predict your behavior so as to do more control and manipulation. So you have to really act out of predictability and really, and by understanding their nature, and it's a bit of self-control that has to take place, and really rebuilding your life and your energy and good connections that nurture your confidence in yourself and love. I mean, I would say that love is really important, but many of us who've never had it, right? We've been born and raised with many people who've been in programs, for example. We don't know what love is. That's why we keep getting caught up in things that are just like, oh, well, I thought that was love was. No, it's not love. Oops. You know, like, oh, well, this is love. Like, oh, wow, really? Really cool. You know,
this is true. I mean, I actually had to go back into time to find out what it was really, what it was.
Or maybe a past life or something.
Yeah, I had to go really far back in all the past lives to see when was the experience so that I could understand it and interpret it. Okay, look for these markers now. Okay, next time. I mean, I had to train myself, so I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. I mean, I wish I had the answers, but it's a struggle.
I actually
Yeah.
think you gave the answer in the beginning of our discussion. I feel that you gave it already. The very
Well,
most
I know it's
powerful.
important, that we haven't, well, you've talked about it on your videos of the breaking contracts and agreements on levels that, how can we understand this so that we can apply this, breaking the contracts and agreements so that we don't participate even unwillingly in their ritual, because the rituals are to get our contractual agreement on some level in order to theft. It's
Yeah,
always about soul theft, life theft, and control and manipulation. So many of us were like, we want to say no. We want to be able to do that, even if we're not fully aware of the process taking place. Because, a lot of this is really subtle
yeah,
over time.
yeah. It is, and it's a subtle erosion of of your perception of it. This is just how they operate. They always do. Um, I think we now know, we can say for sure that they are predictable. They are predictable in every sense of the word. There is nothing that is new under the sun about what they're doing. They've done it in
Yeah.
in pretend spaceships. They've done it in outer space. They've done it in the mid-centuries. They've done it in the Dark Ages. They've hunted the witches down. They're doing the same thing. It just is. We need to. I think what I'm saying is we need to get over the reaction to look at what they're doing now. I think what
Yeah.
we need to come to an agree to
And
sort of an understanding is now solution. Um,
yeah,
right.
I'm glad you brought that up, because
Yeah.
what came to me is, and this is something that many who've been in keep saying it over and over again, narcissistic relationships, or like one dark Cupid, or
Yeah.
and then, let's say you're in the healing process and you're recognizing, oh, it's a narcissist and they do this and they do that and they're horrible, horrible, like, and then at a certain point, like, wait, an obsession takes place to always manipulate. What are they doing next? How horrible are they? And it's always about how bad they are. And like, wait a minute, we need to get off of the obsession
Mhm.
with their horribleness or whatever, and get it back to what can we do to rebuild our lives and not obsess about them at all. Like, we can't even give them our attention
Right.
unless, we need to defend ourselves because they're too close. But even obsessing about how bad they are and how they hurt me, and that actually is a complex PTSD, maladaptive response that is still unhealed trauma.
Mm.
So part of the obsessive compulsive component, even of the love bite, is an unhealed traumatic response to something deeper.
That's right.
But when we keep obsessing about this, or even the obsession to, the news and the drama
Yeah.
and what's happening, like we get in these obsessive
Yeah.
things, like that in and of itself is a PTSD, or complex PTSD response to the traumas that still need healing. And we still need to, I think we just need to grieve over the losses
Right.
of, like, wow, this has been a big scam. We've been had, like, we need to grieve that loss
Right.
and start moving on with real relationships and
Exactly.
people and beings that are real and authentic, and just cut the ties with those that do not function at that capacity. But it's still, I mean, even then, even if that's a solution, we're always left with kind of like a black and white situation. You've got those who will not uh, behave who will
Mm.
not behave correctly or nice, right?
Yeah.
They're anti-life, or
Yeah.
diseased and
Yeah.
corrupted. And then there's those who decided, this is where we're going to go, this is what we're going to do to build, this is what I will do, but this is what I not do.
Mhm.
And we have to set boundaries with, like, this is not okay. You do not do that to me. You do not treat me with disrespect. I will not allow you to shit in my house or shit in my yard, or,
Yeah.
contaminate my environment. No. And sometimes you have to say no, and you have to be really firm. And
Yeah.
that's hard when you're dealing with bullies. When you're
That-
dealing with bullies who just won't stop. They're like program robots who will just keep doing the same thing over and over and over. So
Well,
that's all
I think
something yet.
what you're saying, you started it off really amazing with regards to everything that you've brought together in a beautiful um, image for us to understand, which I am saying thank you very much for that. Is you introduced the tree that you're breaking its confinements. There's a wood box around the roots of the tree, right? This is
Yeah,
it.
I don't know if we put that in the recording, but it was based on a dream.
Yes.
But it's interesting because it related to the seed rock you were holding when we were sharing, like, oh, I got to hold a rock. And then
See.
yours actually related to a memory and a dream of being shown the seed to a tree. And then the tree was being shown to me in such a way that it's basically an unnatural environment that will not encourage its growth and its potential. So that it was as if, we've been living in confinements of a box of control.
Yeah.
That we cannot live to our fullest potential and power while we're being these confined, controlled conditions, almost like controlled experimental conditions, that we need to be according to the natural environment that we were made to proliferate in freedom and potential, which is what the human race, we've been like in a box under these controlled experimental conditions of being tweaked and God knows what, right? With these other forces. And then we need to, get out of that box and start being in a more natural, life affirming growth environment, because it's like we're diseased trees.
Yes.
And we can't get out. Like it's like being in a box,
We're also experiencing the dying off of our artificial beliefs that we have of ourselves as well, I think, which contributes to the box as well, if I may add to your dream.
Yeah.
Is the artificial thinking pattern, perhaps, oh, I'm just an idiot, or oh, I'm not strong enough, no, really this, that, and that, low self-esteem. Smash that contract. You're not weak, you're not an idiot, you're not stupid, you're brave, you're courageous, you have fire within you. This is what I said from the beginning. What this channel is all about is to understand and be mindful that you already have the fire. You don't need to go and steal it from the gods. That is a bullshit story. You already had the fire to begin with. They just like to accuse someone so that someone can hunt that person down. Prometheus had the fire already. There's actually material that I found, by the way, which said he already had the fire. He didn't need to steal it. He was just Zeus was very upset, so he said, "Go chase that guy who's taking the fire from us." Meanwhile, he already had the fire.
Maybe because they were vampires to begin with. They didn't.
Right.
They never had, so they had to steal it, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, believe.
Wow.
Yeah. But yes,
Yeah.
you've already got the fire. You're original. We are original.
We just didn't know how to work with it, and
yeah.
When you're conditioned to not even think that you're worthy of life, it's kind of hard to resurrect that out of yourself. It's like
it is hard. It is not easy. I mean, it's gonna hurt. It's hurtful for the tree to grow in that box, but at the same time, the tree does not understand or comprehend how it feels to be outside of the box until it actually experiences the experience. So the more of these perpetrators are pulling their shit around, the more they're doing that, the more we're seeing who we really are. We're not losers. We're not scum. We're not virus. They're parasites. They need to leave. There's more of us than them. Period. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. That was a great conversation. I'm glad we were able to speak freely at whatever pace we wanted to,
I loved it. This was beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you, Eve.